Well, I come from a musical family. My brother is a keyboardist right now. He's playing with the Temptations and he's playing and singing.
Ooh,
Not one of the dancers, but he's yeah, he sings background and he plays keyboards. My mother um, was a professional singer. She was a music education major at Texas Southern University, where she met my father, who was a professional musician, an entertainer. He played organ, um, played piano, and sang. So when they met in college, they were both music education majors and they got married. And then they decided to go on the road as the Mel Dawn duo. So even though my mother's name is Joyce, Dawn was her stage name, and so she named me after her stage name.
that's
So
so sweet.
yeah, and so my mother, very practical minded. She left the touring world behind. They had a very interesting life in the 60s, touring at the time segregated clubs in the Midwest. It's a black duo, so they toured segregated clubs playing light jazz and stuff like that, and then settled in LA. And my mother, like I said, practical minded. She left the touring life behind and began teaching music in LA, South LA. And so she actually produced an opera at a high school in Watts, California, and it was All in the Night Visitors by Giancarlo
Sure.
Menotti, right? And it was starring. It featured um, all faculty and students. So um, and and she played piano, and there was one flutist. So together they did the whole. They were the accompaniment for
Wow.
the entire opera. And my brother, who was 9 at the time, played them all. So I was 5, and I remember that. It was it just had a profound impact on me. I used to walk to the library and check out the album, right? Um, and I played it to death, All in the Night Visitors. So um, that album has, just that recording, that opera just has a very fond place in my
Sentimental.
heart. Yeah. And when I was in grad school, imagine how I felt when Giancarlo Menotti was a guest. Came to speak as a guest at my grad school. And so I was just like sitting there fanning out, and he was just so gracious. So we have some photos of from that production where my brother is singing with one of the students who was one of the shepherds or something, and it turns out that the shepherd is now in a Temptations tribute band, and my brother is now playing with the
Wow.
Temptations. So it's kind of cool. Um, but anyway, yeah. So my mother taught choir, and so I heard a lot of choir music, and vocal music in general, because her major was actually music education. So I heard a
Uh-huh.
lot of vocal music. Both. I um I think vocals have a very important part of my musical voice in general, uh, whether it's uh, you know instrumental music or what I choose to write, or in my, let's say, non-classical writing. So so yeah, I've written a, a choral piece um, that won an award, and
Wonderful.
and yeah, so and I've written for soprano and piano. The first time I sang harmony was when I was 5 years old. My mother was in a choir with her sorority Delta Sigma Theta, so they had the Delta choraleers, and they invited family members to come along. And so I remember, having to sing a note and hold it while other people had to sing something else, and I was like, "Ooh, this is so cool!" So when I was in choir in at my school in the fourth grade, I went to public schools in LA County, and if there was no harmony part, I would create one. Um, so at the same time, I started playing flute again in the public schools. So fourth grade, um, there was a little orchestra, little black girls, little black boys, playing
Oh,
Handel and you know, um, Hatikva and whatever else was
there,
set in
yeah.
front of us. Yeah. So um, then going into junior high, not middle school, um, I started improvising with the band. I mean, I would do it on my own basically, and then playing at my grandmother's churches and stuff. And then going into jazz in high school, and I had to play the saxophone because flute players were discriminated against. You had to play you had to play something else. So I picked up the saxophone just for high school in order to get in the jazz band. And so when I went to college, when I began college, music was the furthest thing from my mind in terms of something to major in. But by the end of my sophomore year, you had to major in something. So, like, I'd taken all of these courses that I was like, I didn't take to music theory at all. Um, but I thought, okay, I have to major in something, so I'll major in music. And then the next year, I was allowed at my school, Wellesley College, we were allowed to, go to certain other schools, uh, and it would count toward our graduation credits. So Wesleyan has had a very rich music program, and so I took jazz history, not jazz history, jazz theory
Mm.
and performance. And that's when all that music theory started making sense to me because I had to play it, internalize it, play it in all of the keys, and hear it and improvise. So
Hmm. Hmm.
um, now how I got into composition was well, I started writing music um, as a songwriter at age 15, singer songwriter. I'd clunk out chords on the piano and I would sing. Um, I didn't I didn't really write out a lot of things. Um, I could, but I just didn't because I thought, well, who's going to play it? So when I got in college, I I, st- I heard some 20th century composers, and I was just kind of fascinated by like, wow, people are making melodies out of um, things that have no tonality. It's just atonal or there's bleeps and blops and all, and I was kind of intrigued by that. So I started composing in that language. I never could really get into the whole tone roast thing, um, but a lot of times I would start with something and then I'd quickly leave it. So I'd say I started doing that my second year in college, and then when I um, went to this thing in the summer, this symposium um, held at my college called the Composers Conference, and I met, all these amazing composers, Mario Davidovsky, John Adams, and some of the fellows there who are now like, uh, you know, top in their field. There was Tan Dun, Bright Cheng, um,
Wow.
Chen Yi, Zhou Long, and just all these people. And I was just like really amazed. And so I decided, okay, this is what I want to do when I go to grad school. So um, I I went to Columbia University and got my master's in uh, composition, and yeah. So after I finished my master's, I kind of um, turned my attention to ethnomusicology
Mm.
for a PhD. Kind of a 180 because my um, in ethnomusicology, my degree, uh, my focus was on African American music, specifically hip hop culture, underground hip hop culture. So that's what my dissertation is. I love that question because it seems like it was a 180, but at when I started, well, when I finished my master's, I actually returned to performing, but um, because when I was working on my master's, for some reason I convinced myself that um, I might as well not continue studies as a flutist. So I'd actually put it down for about 3 years, and I would still just sort of improvise. And when I changed programs, I started playing out more, just some R&B things, and eventually I went into the jazz scene. Actually, about the same time that I was getting more into my work. Now, why hip hop? It was not my first language. Growing up, I grew up with bands, and specifically rhythm and blues and funk bands, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Stevie Wonder and Steely Dan. Even though they're, that's it's sort of progressive, whatever you want to call it. But um, but what fascinated me about hip hop was the idea of improvisation. I had no idea that improvisation took place in hip hop culture. So it was actually a, a course assignment that drew me in. I found a, a club at a middle school. It was like a hip hop and poetry club, and so there were like this group of like, you know 11 and 12-year olds who were just freestyling, meaning improvising. They were improvising. And
Yeah.
I was just really amazed. I'd never heard of that before. And so I asked more people around me. It turned out that a friend of a friend was heavily into hip hop culture and introduced me to other people and the scene. And then I found that um, improvisation was actually a very important part of that underground cultural scene that
Huh.
has nothing to do with what people really hear on the radio and the popular songs. So improvisation is was what drew me in to studies in hip hop culture. Yes, I would say so. There is something about a big bass sound that is that
Mm.
just makes me feel good. So I'd say just a fullness of a spectral fullness or something. I aim to use like the entire instrument. So and I also, now this isn't necessarily hip hop related, but just sort of the way my mind works. I love groove and I love polyrhythm,
Mm,
polyphony in general. I'm a huge fan of Monteverdi.
too.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. So all of that chugs along as soul music to me. It's just beautiful, and I'm just like all into it. So, um, and I felt that when I was in grad school, groove was something you tried to get away from, and now I embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff with groove, stuff without groove, just wherever my imagination wants me to go. It, that's where I go,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not as restricted by um, such boundaries. Yeah, genre boundaries, tonal boundaries, metric boundaries. Like I have a jazz piece in 21/8, and it's a groove, and it's a groove. Um, and my orchestra piece is in largely in 5.
Oh
So
God.
no, it is all in it's yeah in 5/8. So well, when I was in college, um, I learned something about third string third string music. Gunther Schuller was a big advocate of that, and David Baker. And I thought, okay, this is what I want to do, but the uh, but actually deliberately trying to compose a piece that is jazz and classical, it just wasn't something that inspired me beyond something that was a question, like an intellectual question. It just
Mm-hmm.
didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But the let's see, how do I put this? The direction my compositional life has taken me, I've just I'm just composing pretty much now. you know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, the viola piece. Well, actually, the way that piece came about was um, a grad student named Calvin Green had commissioned this this piece um, when he was at the University of South Carolina. So it was a Spark grant, and so I was able to, you know, do this composition and
Mm.
explore um, different ways of playing this instrument. I mean, so through my research, I was also looking at viola jokes, bowing techniques, and just all kinds of things, traditional versus avant-garde or extended technique, and all of that. And I ended up with something that is it's pretty creative, and there's some things that are very funky, some things that are very traditional, and some things that are very folky. So yeah, so I'm trying I'm trying to um, when I compose, think about where I am right now. What am I feeling right now? What could I do? How can I compose this piece in a way that would be different had I had this opportunity, like, and at another time, you know. So when I have opportunities to compose, rather than necessarily say, okay, well, I want it to sound more classical, I want it to sound more
Mm-hmm.
jazzy. Um, I'm thinking more like, what do I want to say right now? And it also depends on what the ensemble is. Like if I'm going to, if I have a jazz concert coming up, or if I'm writing for a jazz ensemble, I'm going to write something more along that in that idiom. But if I'm composing for somebody who is like call them shredders, a classical shredder, I'm gonna give that person something to work on. Um, so I like to write music that's challenging and fun to play, still at the same time. So, and with this viola piece, for example, there was a lot of energy, just um, like the first piece was just kind of I was I was dealing with just all of these emotions of what was going on in 2020 and
Oh yeah.
2021,
Oh
and
yeah.
then but the third movement is just very calming, and it's not something I would have written in my grad school days. That third movement, because it's just completely tonal, it just completely rhythmic, and you know, so I don't. I want to write something that's authentically myself and what I'm dealing with at the time, and um, yeah, written also keeping in mind who I'm writing for. My experience with GLF Cam has been probably one of the most profoundly positive experiences of uh, the last 5, 6 years. I actually met Gabriela Lena Frank through um, the Jazz Composers Orchestra Institute, which was a part of the uh, American Composers Orchestra. And so they, they were looking for jazz composers, jazz artists, jazz, you know, people, um, to give them an opportunity to write for the orchestra. And I thought, wow, this is for me. And so it was actually a two-year program. So I met her in 2015, and
Hmm.
just from the first conversation, just clicked right away. She knew what I was feeling when I kind of um, talked to her about some of the things that I was feeling in grad school, and just felt like she knew what I was talking about. And then the next year, when I was selected to actually compose the piece that would be read by ACO, she became my mentor and mentored me through this big scary orchestra experience. You know, so um, then the following year, I was invited to be a part of her new program. I think it had just been running for about a year, and where composers of just all kinds of different backgrounds would be brought to Boonville, California, and we would write for a particular ensemble. And the inclusivity and diversity, um, as well as the other things you expect in a selective program, excellence and innovation. Um, these were all hallmarks of her program, and just there were people um, from just all walks of life, just different ages, different experiences and genders, and it's just been really wonderful. And now, one of the things that I was uh, selected to be involved in, it's called Composing Earth, And I'm a 2022-23 fellow for this particular program with GLF CAM,
Right.
and that's it. It's a cohort of composers who will come together once a month and learn about climate change and environmental issues. And so we just got our syllabus, and it's whoa, it's like a college reading
Extensive.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's intensive, and so we'll be, talking about that, talking about different issues and reading about, different issues. And then in 2023, we'll be commissioned to compose for a an ensemble or something, and based on our experiences. So, and I think it's once again we're going to be coming from all different backgrounds, and of course remotely, just from different perspectives. I live in an urban area, and it's going to be how I deal with um, you know how I can leave less of a footprint and do more um, to promote sustainability, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
can
Mm-hmm.
be different from someone who lives in a rural area or
Sure.
more of a suburban area. And I think getting ideas, exchanging ideas is going to be really um, enlightening, because there isn't one way, you know.
Right.
Um, and so I've been thinking about it, about ways to be more um, responsible, and and to even incorporate it into things that uh, lead to a healthy lifestyle. Like,
Yep.
do I need to drive to the store? Can I walk to the store? And my part of LA, not a lot of people walk. So it's like, but having lived in New York for so long, it's like not a big deal to walk. And so, just walking more to do uh, regular activities, and seeing how I can combine tasks um, when I use my car, instead of, making one, one-off trips. Just being more conscious about things. Those are some of my little ways. Well, I guess as an artistic person, sometimes we're very intuitive and very sensitive, or at least that's my excuse. And you can get so self-absorbed and wallowing in self-pity. And there have been moments where I was just like, blah, I'm not famous yet, and blah, and this isn't going my way. And and the message that I kept getting back to me was, well, if you're so stuck in yourself, why don't you come out of yourself and um, volunteer, do something? All right, do something to help someone else. And so finally, that opportunity came when I started working as a working with the NAACP's ACTSO program. It stands for Afro Academic Cultural, Technological, and Scientific Olympics, ACTSO. And it's actually a program that started in the 1970s, and it was created to give um, high school students, African American specifically, but not exclusively, um, a chance to excel and be mentored and to network with others. And and I started doing that in, maybe 2009.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still doing it. There have
That's
been times where I
wonderful.
said, "Okay, I'm just so busy, I can't do it," and then I keep doing it. I
Yeah.
make room, and the students, they give me life. Um, they give me, you know, um, inspiration, and I learn from them. I always learn from them, and
Oh
I'm in
yeah.
touch with a lot of these students still. I was working at a middle school as a like directing music programs, and some of those uh, people are now in their late 20s. And a lot of them are still doing music, and again, I'm in touch with them, and it's it's just a beautiful thing. Mentorship is something I didn't have growing up. Um, I had to figure out a lot of things, even in college and in grad school. I found mentors after that experience for the most part. I guess not having had mentorship and seeing the importance of mentorship, I wanted to offer that to students,
Yeah.
and so
Beautiful.
I do see myself as a mentor, and I think it is very, very important. For emerging composers who are, let's say they're very young, um, like in their teens or 20s, I would encourage them to listen to lots of different kinds of music and play a lot of different kinds of music, or at least be open to it. If even if you don't want to play it, like if you're in college, if you have an opportunity, take a, a course in a style of music that's unfamiliar to you. Um, I think that's one thing. For for one thing, it expands your ear, and another thing, it allows you to hear how other people make music. Um, music, people of different cultures make music for a variety of reasons, and sometimes that can um, lead you to be interested in the people that make that kind of music. That's what drew me to ethnomusicology. Actually, when I found out that something called ethnomusicology existed, I was like, "What the heck is that?" But then, you know, being around people that make music and finding out why they make music, as well as how they make music, that just really fascinated me. And so, um, in this universe now that's so uh, we're, we're we're drawn closer together and pulled further apart by this technology, we can get into our bubbles, you know, where we uh, communicate pretty much with people who think like us, and so we could be listening to the same music and that kind of thing. Um, Taking steps to just go beyond that. A lot of times it will be through a course that you take in college, or um, going to a concert series or something like that. Uh, and yeah, I'd say that music can be a safe way to make a first step into reaching beyond something that you're familiar with. Let's see. There's other advice that I'd have. Yeah, don't compare yourself to other people. You don't know what their their issues are. Um, like uh, thinking that, well, I'm 17 years old and I haven't have my, I haven't gotten into this thing yet that I've applied for 2 times and I didn't get in, and I must be horrible. No. Um, going back to something that I'd said earlier, when I when I graduated from college, I stopped playing the flute for about 2 or 3 years. So I was pretty much self-taught until college. So I took flute lessons for 3 years in college,
Mm-hmm.
and then I convinced myself that there were other people who were my age that were much better than me. And so, yeah, I actually stopped playing. So when I came back to it, I realized that nobody has my own voice. So when you're 17 or 13 or 14 or 15 or to 21 or whatever, um, there are a lot more opportunities for for girls, for women, for non-binary people, for people of color, for all these different groups of people. There are a lot more opportunities, and what I'm also realizing is that could also bring potential for additional stress and pressure. Another competition, another way for somebody to tell me I'm not good enough. What I have said was that, I mean, I was trying to think of a nice way of saying it, but you win some things and you lose some things. But when you don't win something, there are opportunities um, of reflection, um, of even seeing the way the world works. There are many. Um, just because you didn't get something doesn't mean you are terrible. It means at that particular time you didn't get it, and you know, there are there'll be other opportunities after. And I'm saying opportunities a lot because every day that you're alive, there is another chance for something to happen, and it's up to us to make things happen when they seem not to be working our way. So one thing I've learned is that nobody has my voice, nobody has my unique voice. So even though I may not uh, I may not be strong in one area, I have strengths in all these other areas. So um, my mission as an artist is to be the best me that I can be. So that can mean, you know, improving my intellect, my artistry, taking lessons, performing, uh, and then getting balance. Something that is not in that realm of what I'm trying to achieve. And that's also something I've said to an aspiring composer. I remember talking to her and her father. Like, her father was concerned about all this pressure, and like, how do you get balance? And I said, have something that's just away from all of that. For me, when I was in grad school, that's the same time that I started my career as a jazz musician. So I would do, I would take my classes, and then I would, do my field research, and then I would also, go to jam sessions and go to jazz concerts and, perform. So I had a whole other life that was totally separate from my academic life, my scholarly life. And my attitude was, okay, well, if they throw me out of school tomorrow, I'll still have this. And even when I was working on my comps, um, I mean, the ethnomusicology exam was nuts. I mean, they could test you on anything, and there was the famous needle drop where they, get
Yeah.
an album, drop the needle, and you'd have to say something about the culture of this. It's just crazy because it could have been anything. But how I prepared for that was I would, I would schedule time for um, study, eating, walking, exercising, and then every Friday night I'd walk over to Blockbuster Video and
Oh.
get two movies, watch one, fall asleep on the other one, then watch the second one the next night. So I would schedule in time for exercise and time for relaxation, because that relaxation time is resetting time. And one thing I need to go back to is um, going away. Like I'm in an urban area, and for me, my reset was going, like going up the coast, um, and just being away from the internet, being away from,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Netflix and just cell phones and stuff like that, and reset, recharge, and renew. And as intense as anyone can be, everyone needs sleep. And so it also makes sense that everyone needs to take a break, you know, um, from whatever hustle they're involved in. Well, interestingly, I got my first two commissions
Ooh,
during the
congrats.
pandemic. Yeah. Well, one was the ACO commission, the American Composers
Mm-hmm.
Orchestra commission, um, and that one was I composed two pieces for um, vocalist pianist Clarice Assad. Now that was intimidating because she's a composer too.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so that but she was so amazing, and she even created little videos of my of her performing my compositions. I miss performing. I miss working with people, collaborating in person
Yeah.
with people, with humans. In LA, between COVID and just the lack of um, spaces for people to perform,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's yeah, it's causing me to think of like ways, like alternate ways of getting my music out. So
Mm.
so that's kind of where I am now. Like, okay, I am a creative person. Now it's great to compose, but I also want to create with human beings. For my next few months, I'll be kind of like in putting my academic hat on, my scholarly hat, teaching classes. I have the college course, like the jazz history course, teaching remotely, 200 students, and then I'll have my teaching artist load, which is teaching fifth graders. So that tends to kind of take some of my energy, getting other people to create, and then the academic world, that's a whole other kind of thing. That still uses, I still use creativity, in how I teach. So as far as like composition, I have the GLF cam um, composition to think about, and I'm looking forward to finding out what my ensemble will be, and carving space in my schedule like I did when I was in grad school. That's something I'm going to need to do, like to carve space to compose, to just be free and just write. So right now I do I do record my thoughts, uh,
Mm-hmm.
on my phone, and then I still have manuscript paper in different places around my home, And yeah, just being open to that. But I am going to have to actually schedule time to do that. Yeah, especially when you don't have a specific deadline looming. That I'm thinking, okay, well, I have to do this. I have to do all of this other stuff. I have to, But even I find that the more I have to do, the more stuff I actually get done. So it's just everything is just flowing all at once. So in the slower times, I have to also just use that as the reset time. Even though I might not be able to, drive up the coast like I used to be able to do. The other concern was when it was fire season. Instead of moping when it's slower and being impatient, to um, embracing that time a bit more, and using that time as a different kind of reset, because when the activity hits, it's going to hit.